Okay, Jeff Allen here. Another video on AI topics. It's artificial intelligence. And this one's going to be about the concept of creativity. And this is coming up a lot. And I want to first cite Philip Cohen, who was on the Omniscient webinar. That took place last night on AI, NLP, speech recognition, and machine translation, predicting the next chapter with real world use cases. It happened last night, and I was allowed to see the preview of the slides, which was really good. It was about a few days before it was announced on the hype curve, the hype curve of pretty much AI stuff related to language industry. And so thank you, Deanna, for letting me see those to kind of comment on before you put them out. This is really feedback, but the Philip made a really interesting comment. Well, it was asked about creativity, and well, it's always this big question. In fact, it was probably my question or someone else's question about will this affect the translation industry? How will this affect the creativity of the people? Will it put people out of jobs and stuff? Which is kind of a very big question, a very important question right now. And what is about creativity? And and I did say in one of the videos I had not tried to use a ChatGPT, and I did last night on things that I can, because pretty much everything I'm working on, even in my personal stuff, I'm putting out new videos, new content, and I don't want to put that into a thing online, right? So I don't want to do that. So I said that for my own personal, my own work, personal intellectual property things, I'm not going to put that in any of these open, these online AI stuff, and I had never have, and I'm not gonna put my own personal intellectual property things that I'm working on right now into them either, even if it's gonna help generate stuff. I'm not gonna do it because I already know the knowledge. I already have the knowledge, right? So I don't need an app to tell me things, right? So I did kind of test it out last night, kind of to see the creativity part of it, right? What can it do? I tried to put my name in there about machine translation. It didn't recognize me. Okay, world knowledge. And I put a couple other people's names. Actually, Deanna put your name and it didn't recognize you either. Okay, so that made me feel good. But it didn't recognize a few other people who probably have a little bit more stuff on Wikipedia and probably have some things that are, visible outside of LinkedIn. And I have a lot of publications that are kind of, locked down and copyright things that you can't access very easily, right? So that doesn't help when it's in books, right? So whereas I'm not going and giving conferences all the time where you can see that helped when you're doing that. It's probably sucking stuff, but the whole creativity, it was interesting to watch it for the people to say who is so and so in this field, and then watch it kind of generate stuff. And you could see it's generating. It's taken concepts that are in profiles or things or on online web pages or stuff, and it's taking the keywords and kind of just making sense out of it. It wasn't bad because the stuff I was asking were pretty easy for it to find information. But the whole thing of creativity, which I think is going to be a key thing, is about replacing people, and will this replace people, and how human machine kind of stuff, and whether this will can it be used, can these whatever AI apps replace people to do the work, to create content stuff. And it's not going to create any of my content, right? Because I'm an expert and the stuff I know, that thing can't invent it. And what Philippe said, and I think it was really interesting, I think key. He says it can only tell you the things. It's not verbatim. I'm trying to just recall what he said. It can only base it on what it's already learned and then kind of spit it out. It's not going to invent new things. I think he talked about could it take, a box, I can't remember if it was like the 40th something, or, could it create the 41st? But no, because it can only base things on the past and what's already been done and kind of repeat it and explain it and do it, but it can't create a new innovative thing. It's only basing on the known, whereas we are social beings, okay? And I think this is really the important thing that has not been said yet in the whole creativity aspect, or it's not been focused on. The way I said that, these apps can't be human beings, and we've been saying this for machine automated translation for 30 years. It can't replace people because people are people, the brain. And I think it's a little bit more than that. We say that the brain is more complex, and it is. We're trying to make neural networks that are trying to replicate the brain, right? Tony Stark in Marvel Comics, Iron Man's trying to create Jarvis that it can do better, right? But it's not just the fact that the brain with all the synapses and stuff is fast, but it's our social knowledge. And that's what I kind of felt Philippe was saying last night. That you can't replicate social knowledge. You have the social knowledge. It's kind of like Trivial Pursuit and general knowledge. You can answer those questions or you can't. If you don't know, if you haven't encountered the information that's in Trivial Pursuit, you can't answer the question. You can try guessing based on dates and stuff, right? But a lot of these questions are like you got to have a good general knowledge of the culture, right? It could be music, it can be whatever, it can be art, can be whatever. Some of these questions are hard because or sports, you got to know the sports stuff. You got to know it. You don't. You can't know who had the batting average of something, or who had the running average of this, that, unless you follow those things, right? Or look it up. And this social knowledge is part of what we do when we process anything we're doing. We're discussing, we're talking with people. I spend a lot of time, talking with people in different walks of life, music stores, pubs, restaurants, retirement homes, uh, associations, nonprofit associations, all kinds of things on a regular basis. And what I'm realizing is that a lot of things that I'm explaining when we're talking is I'm taking social knowledge and I'm using that to construct discussions, right? And so much of what we know is based on social knowledge, and the computer just doesn't have that, right? And it's really hard to do parallel processing with even whatever AI stuff you want, neural stuff, to go out and look for things that it hasn't lived, right? It doesn't know. It's searching for things. Whereas when we think about your flashbacks, when you've had flashbacks, your flashbacks of life at certain points in time, right? It's already been experienced. And you have a lifetime of each of us has a lifetime of accumulated knowledge, of experience. And when we're doing things, we're not searching out on the internet to get things. We're searching we're reflecting back on our experience of having lived all kinds of things, right? And this is what apps are missing. I think that's the key. And it's hard to kind of explain this thing, right? Maybe I need to kind of really sit down and think about what to call this. In fact, the name of this video, I don't know what to call it. It's not really creativity, it's social knowledge. I mean, it's creativity and social knowledge. That's what it is. And that's why the apps are going to have a difficult time. It's not so much about the fact that they're inaccurate on some data. It's that it doesn't know that the data is inaccurate because it hasn't lived to know that the dates don't correspond with other things, right? There's some things where the place doesn't correspond or something, there's something that we do when we're discussing, that we are processing and thinking about things and saying, no, it can't be that because of this and that. No, yeah, that. A lot of things I think about, when I think, and we all do this, right? When I'm thinking about an event or something in the past, I place it according to other things I've lived at that period of time, right? And to find, when was that thing? Well, I'm placing it other times in my childhood or my teenage years or my adult years or older. I'm placing it on certain timeline and finding points of reference in the timeline of life or things that happened, other events, right? And then they can place it in some things we place it in, this is close to that thing. It's kind of hard for a computer to do this, right? Kind of for any app to do this because it hasn't lived. It's basing on search knowledge, right? It's fetching things. Now it's getting better at doing stuff, and you can feed it all the stuff you want, but it still doesn't know what the relationships between all these things. And I think back, I think one of the important things when I was in college, well, actually in high school, but in college, I really liked history, and I took a lot of history courses. My first bachelor's degree, and one of the things that my professor Daniel Skalberg, Dr. Daniel Skalberg at Malone University was really good about. He taught a lot of these history courses, but what he taught us was not to try to memorize dates only. What he taught to do within history classes was to understand what was happening in the world in parallel. What was happening in Western Europe? What was happening in the Middle East at the time? What was happening in the Americas at the time, right? In history, a long time ago. What was happening in Asia? What was happening in these what was happening at these in these different civilizations in parallel? And what were the events that kind of were happening at the same time that were kind of similar events in different cultures? That like not everybody was like a thing here. Other things were happening around the same time. And this is kind of the important. I think this is what I'm trying to explain here is this idea of social knowledge is that when you're able to map the things that are happening, kind of like in a history, in general history, and you've got all these things across all these different cultures and civilizations, and you're seeing the dates that correspond. Oh, this happened there, and that happened there. This war, this and that here, or this happened here, or somebody invented this, or some found this, or something, and that affects this, that. You're seeing how things are happening at the same time, and you're constructing out history of human beings. I want to say mankind, but say human beings. Uh, kind of evolved, and things are happening. There were things that were happening at the same time, and this kind of knowledge is what we have that the computer doesn't have. It'd be a great debate. I kind of had this in some roundtable about things, right? But I think that this is how we are, and this is where I benefit that the computer cannot replace me, because it can't have my knowledge of history, my knowledge of different fields, my knowledge of things of interrelationship with those things. It can't have that. No matter how many articles and things I pump into it of my own stuff, it can't know what I know, and it can't process and explain what I know. It can explain what it's fed, and it can construct sentences and retake things. And this is my concept of authoring memory, right? I kind of invented the concept of authoring memory. Talked about it. It's looking back, finding things, and just creating sentences based on those things it already knows. Content reuse, but it can't create new things based on the knowledge that you have to say, this is something we haven't seen before. Can't do it. So I think that that's where creativity, the whole thing of creation, transcreation, all these concepts, which a lot of marketing materials and things are based on how you do this, right? You're trying to entice people to want to have something. The computer isn't enticing things. It's just spitting out stuff. It can't make feelings, it doesn't know how to use these words and stuff to make the feelings come out of something in history, something in the past, based on some commercials that you've seen somewhere that that's gonna work. And I'll just give one last example of this, probably something really concrete. 7 years ago, 8 years ago, well, actually 40 years ago, there was a song that was on the radio all the time. And we actually, in physical education class, they made us run around the room playing this little 45, right? The 45 record, and two songs, one on each side. And they play one all the time just to make you run because it had a lot of beat and stuff. And I'll get to in a second what it is. And then in the school bus, in America, school buses are, they belong to the school system. So those yellow buses. So there was a kid every single morning. He had his boombox radio in the back, blasting this song all the time, all the time. 40 years later, I'm now playing that song, right? At open mics and things, all kinds of things. But the interesting thing is, about 7 or 8 years ago, in France, they took the song and they adapted it slightly to a car maker did it for their car, right? And they used the song in the thing, and it was It was the Dacia Duster. It's a Nissan brand. It's an Dacia Duster. Well, the song was Another One Bites the Dust. So dun, dun, dun. Another one bites the duster. Dun, dun, dun. Another one bites the duster. Now, whoever did that version, they knew that the song existed. They knew they could do a play on words on it, right? And and they probably thought, well, we could take another song called "Dust in the Wind," but we say "Duster in the Wind" it doesn't sound too good, right? So they knew, these are kinds of things that social knowledge, the social knowledge, know that that song existed. We could reuse that and do it, apply it to something else. That's what humans can do, and that's kind of hard for a computer to say. Hey, if I add two letters to it, I can take the song, the title of the song, and apply it to a car manufacturer's new car that they've come out with. That's how we're creative. And that's kind of hard for AI, artificial intelligence, to kind of replicate. So, thoughts for today. Thanks for listening.